On our side, we've asked the judicial nominees on the agenda for the first time to be held over. We can voice vote the executive nominees up this week. For the judicial nominees, I'll be voting in favor of Judge Hopkins, Ms. Jenkins, and Mr. Walker. And I'd like to briefly explain my opposition to some of the others. Ms. Rickelman has spent much of her legal career as an activist, litigating cases against state law regulating abortion. She surely is entitled to her opinions, and she certainly holds them very strongly. But it's concerning that her personal opinion may cloud how she views facts. For example, she explained that the Dobbs decision meant that America was, quote, on the verge of what may be the biggest public health crisis, end of quote, in decades. It's hard to understand how she could believe that since COVID pandemic just occurred. Concerns over her impartiality weren't helped by her answers at the hearing. In fact, it was a typical example of the lack of preparation or candor in answering questions. I asked her to explain one of the two main conclusions in the law review article she wrote after practicing law for decades. The last quarter of the article is devoted to arguing that requiring DNA testing for those convicted of crimes is unconstitutional. She flatly denied that the article made that argument. Later, when challenged with the argument she made, she implied that she only reviewed the article's title. In response to written questions, she maintained that she did read the material she submitted, so her answers to my questions make even less sense now. It's not asking too much for nominees to be familiar with the materials that they submit to the committee. Next, Mr. Johnstone has been nominated to serve on the Ninth Circuit. I'm concerned about his views on the Second Amendment. In 2021, a decision from the Ninth Circuit claimed that there was no constitutional right to carry firearms anywhere outside the home. Mr. Johnston called that, in his words, a narrow decision. That's like saying it would be a narrow decision if a court concluded that there is no right to petition the government because you still have the right of free speech at home. They're both erasing part of the Constitution. Finally, I'll explain about Mr. Garcia. He helped the governor of New Mexico implement strict COVID orders. One of the most concerning parts of his record is how he handled New Mexico's decision to ban in-person church services in April 2020. When the order was challenged in court, he was repeatedly asked why the order wasn't issued until 5 p.m. the evening before Easter. He explained that he was, in his words, busy in the morning, but he admitted revising the order was, in his words, a relatively quick process. Mr. Garcia has never explained why he couldn't prioritize such a time-sensitive task. Delay did mean that no court could realistically consider a challenge to the order until after Easter. That shows a lack of regard for an important constitutional right. These issues are typical examples of what we've seen from this administration's nominees. It's concerning that unprepared and activist judicial nominees are being rubber stamped. Ultimately, it's going to affect the people the most are the litigants. I yield.
Thank you, Senator Grassley. I understand Senator Cornyn is